The Offspring announced a huge summer tour with Jimmy Eat World and Newfound Glory. The director of the canceled Prince Netflix documentary speaks out. And are the Smashing Pumpkins the most misunderstood band in the history of rock and roll? Let's break it all down on this edition of the Rock News Roundup podcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Rock News Roundup podcast, your destination for the latest in rock music news, reviews, and discussion here on the Nick Chino Music YouTube channel. I'm your host, Nick Chino. Welcome back to the show. We got the mics on, we got the devil horns up, and we're here to talk about the latest and greatest in the world of rock music news. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure to like this video. I really appreciate that. Make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on future videos. And you can also listen to this podcast as an audio-only version on your favorite podcasting service, whether that's Spotify or Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to your podcasts, you can find the Rock News Roundup podcast. And if you do find us on those streaming platforms and where you listen to your podcast, I really appreciate a rating and review. And you can also follow me on social media at Nick Chino Music. And if you are watching this on YouTube, or if you want to check out the YouTube channel, I have my latest video up there right now, which is my rock album review for the new album from Doves called Constellations for the Lonely. It's their 6th studio album. I'm a big Doves fan. Spoiler alert, I didn't love this record as much as I thought I would, but if you're a Doves fan or if you love British rock, it's definitely worth checking out, and you should definitely check out my rock album review of the new album from Doves, Constellations for the Lonely, which is up on the channel right now. But you know what? We got to get to our headliner topics on this edition of the Rock News Roundup podcast. We're going to be talking about whether the Smashing Pumpkins are the most misunderstood band in the history of rock and roll. According to Billy Corgan, they are. We're also going to talk about the director of the canceled Prince Netflix documentary speaking out about the cancellation of that documentary. And we're going to kick things off with the first headliner topic for this week's show, and that is the Offspring have announced a huge summer tour for this year with Jimmy Eat World and Newfound Glory on the bill. This is actually really, really cool. It's going to be called Supercharged Worldwide in 25. It's going to be going 34 dates this summer. The general on sale, the pre-sale actually is already happening right now on Ticketmaster and on ticket outlets. But the general on sale for this tour is going to be this Friday, March the 7th. So if you want to buy tickets, that's when it's going to be happening. And the tour is going to kick off in West Palm Beach, Florida on July the 11th. And it's going to wrap up in Denver, Colorado on September the 7th. And I was actually thinking this is a pretty good lineup. As far as the Offspring go, I'm a moderate Offspring fan. I wouldn't say I'm a diehard Offspring fan, but going back to Smash in 1994, I've listened to the Offspring for a very long time. They were one of those go-to bands when I was growing up. A lot of my friends when I was growing up were huge fans of the Offspring. So I really, do enjoy a lot of their music. And their latest album, Supercharged, was decent. There were some pretty good songs on there. I found the new album to be a good mix of kind of old school Offspring kind of punk sound from the 90s, and then the more what I guess would be like the sellout Offspring sound, which is more like the pretty fly for a white guy thing. But it's actually not too bad. So if you haven't checked out that new album from the Offspring, which came out back in the fall of 2024, it's definitely worth checking out. So that's pretty cool that they're going to be headlining this tour. But for me, the more exciting bands on this bill are definitely Jimmy Eat World and Newfound Glory, bands that I am a much bigger fan of those bands than I am of the Offspring. And this is like an absolute stacked lineup. As far as Jimmy Eat World goes, it's been quiet for them. Their last studio album, Surviving, came out in 2019. I thought that was a really great record, a really great Jimmy Eat World record. And I'm still waiting for a follow-up from them. I'm surprised that we actually haven't gotten a follow-up album from Jimmy Eat World. We're going on 6 years since Surviving came out. They have put out some material in the intervening years. They put out I think it was called Something Loud, which came out last year or the year before, as well as I think it was called Place Your Debts was another song that they released over the last couple of years. So it hasn't been completely, we haven't been completely deprived of new Jimmy Eat World music, but we haven't really gotten a lot from them in the last 6 years, although they've been a hit in the road. So I guess they've been doing lots of touring, and maybe we'll get a new album from Jimmy Eat World at some point in this year or next year. But then Newfound Glory, also very cool that they're going to be playing this tour as well. I really like kind of like modern Newfound Glory. I like a lot of the stuff that they put out in the early 2000s when they hit the scene. But one of my favorite Newfound Glory records is Resurrection, which came out in 2014. It's hard to believe it's been already like over a decade since that record came out. Absolutely absolutely love that record, Resurrection. I love the follow-up to that as well, Makes Me Sick. I thought those were two really, really great Newfound Glory records. But I wasn't as a huge fan of their last record. The name of the last record kind of escapes me, but they've stayed very active, Newfound Glory, over the last decade or so, or like 20 years plus now. They've been active as a band, continue to put out really good music. So really cool that Jimmy Eat World and Newfound Glory are going to be on this tour along with the Offspring. And the thing is, sometimes with these package tours, when you get 3 or 4 bands on a solid bill that go, on tour across the country, they don't really have a strong lineup all the way through. Sometimes the opening bands might be so-so compared to the headliner band, but this is actually a really, really good lineup, and I'm actually really tempted to buy tickets myself. So I went on Ticketmaster.com or .ca for us Canadians, and I checked out the prices for the July 23rd show at the Budweiser Stage in Toronto. Budweiser Stage is like the go-to summer festival or summer venue for these concerts. It's an open air, well, kind of like half covered, half open venue in Toronto. The covered part is over most of the seats, and then they have a huge lawn area at the back of the venue, which is awesome. I've seen so many shows at the Budweiser Stage. The last one I saw was back in August of last year. I went to see Deep Purple at the Budweiser Stage. I've seen Oasis there. I've seen Foo Fighters there. Budweiser Stage is a really great kind of go-to summer venue for a lot of bands when they come to Toronto in the summer. So July 23rd at the Budweiser Stage. I was taking a look at the ticket prices, and they're not bad. Okay, so look at this. $70 for lawns, which is, again, general admission. If it rains, you're going to be totally screwed on the lawns. You're going to get rained on. But otherwise, it's very, very cool to watch a show on the lawns at Budweiser Stage. I've seen a lot of shows. I saw Noel Gallagher's High Flying Birds there 2 summers ago on the lawns. Had a great time, aside from some of the annoying fans who were singing louder than Noel, but I digress on that one. But $70 for lawns, which is pretty good. When you think about this bill, Offspring, Jimmy Eat World, Newfound Glory, you think about this bill, $70 to go on the lawns. You can smoke on the lawns. You can drink on the lawns. It's actually a pretty good deal. And then $80 for a lot of the seated parts of the Budweiser Stage, which is, again, pretty good when you consider the caliber or the popularity of these 3 bands on the bill. But then if you want to get the general admission floor at Budweiser Stage, it's going to be $300 and upwards for that. So that's a lot. I've seen a lot of shows at the floor at Budweiser Stage as well. I guess if it's worth it, if you really, really want to be up close. This isn't really the type of show where I'm like, I got to be front row for this. I got to be general admission for this. Definitely don't feel like I have to do that for this. I would sit back on the lawns and just enjoy this show just as much as I was if I was up front for this one. But if you want to get the VIP, everybody's doing the VIP thing now. If you go see bands, you get the VIP with the exclusive merch, and you get to go buy the merch earlier than everybody else and just buy things, I think, generally earlier than other people. VIP for this show is going to run you $500. That's 500 bones to go to this show for the VIP and maybe get a meet and greet with some of the bands, which would be pretty cool. So, but not a bad price for these concerts for this bill. But the thing is, it's so annoying as a music fan. As somebody like me who loves going to concerts, I've seen so many concerts over the course of my life so far. And it's just, I used to be able to go see multiple shows per year, whether it be at Budweiser Stage or Scotiabank Arena or wherever in Toronto, some of those big venues. I used to be able to go to multiple concerts over the course of a year, but because these things are so expensive nowadays, so unbelievably expensive, it's really only 1 or 2 concerts that I go to per year. I got a couple of tickets this year. Of course, I got my Oasis tickets to go see them at Rogers Stadium, which is a venue that doesn't exist yet, by the way. Kind of nervous about that, but I got my Oasis tickets for later on this summer at the end of August. And then I have some tickets to go see Stereophonics at Massey Hall in Toronto coming up in a couple of weeks on March 22nd. But I wanted to go to some other shows. When I saw this one come up, I'm like, that could be good. I was talking to my girlfriend, Danielle. We're like, this could be a fun one. We want to go to more shows. We want to go to more concerts. But then what if there's something else that comes up that I want to go to more? That's really the hardest thing to decide on. I've already spent a fair bit of money to go see Oasis, a fair bit of money to go see Stereophonics. And so going to see multiple concerts a year or more than 3 or 4 concerts a year, like I used to when I was younger, if I went to this venue, it used to be called the Molson Amphitheater in Toronto. If I went to a show at the Molson Amphitheater or went to shows there back when I used to go back like 20, 25 years ago, it would have been a lot cheaper and I could see a lot of shows, but it's not so much so much the case anymore. But I'm like seriously tempted because Offspring would be great. I would still stick around for their set, but I really want to see Jimmy Eat World and Newfound Glory. I've seen most of the bands that I love, most of my favorite bands that I've loved over my life. I've seen them live, right? But Jimmy Eat World, who's always been one of my favorite, maybe not top 5 or top 10, maybe in the top 15 or my top 20 favorite bands of all time. Jimmy Eat World is one of those, and I've never seen them live. Even though they come here to Hamilton, they play Toronto all the time. I've never seen Jimmy Eat World live aside from buying tickets to some of their live streams that they were doing when they were playing their albums in full during the COVID era. So that was kind of fun, but I've never seen them in the flesh, and this would be definitely very, very cool to go see Jimmy Eat World, Newfound Glory, and the Offspring. So if you're interested in going to that yourself, you can buy tickets. The pre-sales happening right now for all the various fan pre-sales and the American Express pre-sale and the Google and the Amazon and the whatever pre-sale. But the general on sale for us normies is going to be happening this Friday, March the 7th. So if you want to get tickets, that's when it's going to be happening for the Offspring, Jimmy Eat World, and Newfound Glory, the supercharged worldwide in 25 tour. 34 dates. It's going to be cool. Let me know in the comments below what you think of this tour. Is this something that interests you? Would you be going to rush to buy tickets when they go on sale for the general public this Friday? You can let me know in the comments below. But let's continue on with our next headliner topic on this edition of the Rock News Roundup podcast, and that is, are Smashing Pumpkins the most misunderstood band in the history of rock and roll? Well, Billy Corgan seems to think so, and Billy Corgan. I love the guy, but sometimes he just says the dumbest things, especially when he's being interviewed by people. And well, he went on Joe Rogan recently, which is already stupid. He went on the Joe Rogan podcast and said, and this is a quote, that Smashing Pumpkins are one of the most misunderstood bands in the history of rock and roll. He was kind of talking about how Nickelback and Creed are kind of liked now. I talked about them on the last episode of the podcast, is that, everybody, well, not everybody hated them when they first hit the scene in the early 2000s and the late 90s, but like they weren't given a lot of a chance, and a lot of people really ragged on them for a lot of years. But that sentiment has kind of shifted over the last few years, where now people are like, hey, Creed and Nickelback, they got some good tunes. In fact, I listed them on a couple of my tracks of the week here on the podcast last week. So even I have softened on Creed and Nickelback over the years. And he thinks that, Billy Corgan thinks that the Smashing Pumpkins are kind of in the same position as those bands, is that they're kind of misunderstood, and they're really not given the appreciation, or maybe Billy isn't given the appreciation that he's looking for, that he feels that other bands have been getting over the last, bunch of years. Bands that people previously were really negative about are now all of a sudden very positive about, and going to see their shows and giving them a lot of big business, and really they're doing well, running off that nostalgia. So he thinks that Smashing Pumpkins, eventually the time will tell the tale of the Smashing Pumpkins. And he said that he thinks that part of the reason why the Smashing Pumpkins are misunderstood, in his view, is that he had a really antagonistic relationship with the media in the 1990s that led to a kind of a negative view of him in the band, or like some sort of misunderstood view of the band. And I kind of understand that, because Billy Corgan didn't really try to impress anybody back in the 90s. He was very, very, very much just in his own world, and he didn't really care whether people liked him or not, or whether the Smashing Pumpkins appealed to the masses as much as other bands at the time. So he, in his view, thinks that they are very misunderstood. And I'm just thinking about Billy Corgan. I'm thinking, why is he always going on about this stuff? Smashing Pumpkins are still a very, very big rock band. They're still a very, very prominent name in the world of rock music, and most of the majority, or most of the original lineup has come back, except for Darcy. Jimmy Chamberlin's in the band. James Iha is in the band. They have, everybody that they want to be in the band is in the band. They've had their ups and downs over the years. Don't get me wrong. There's been albums that have done better than others when it comes to Smashing Pumpkins and Billy Corgan's career in general. But Billy Corgan has sustained a career in the music industry, and as maybe he's not as relevant now as he used to be, but like as a mostly relevant artist for more than 30 years now. So I don't really know why he still has this kind of underdog attitude where he thinks that the Smashing Pumpkins, and I think he's not really so much about Smashing Pumpkins, that he feels like he personally hasn't gotten his due and hasn't gotten his flowers when it comes to people like kneeling at the altar, bending the knee to the Smashing Pumpkins. Oh, Billy, you're so great. You're so great. He feels like he hasn't gotten enough of that over the years. And that's really disappointing, because I've been with Billy and the Smashing Pumpkins for many, many years. I've been with them through those ups and downs as a Smashing Pumpkins fan. I became a fan of them in the mid-90s, when Melancholy and Adore came out. Those were the records that really got me into the Smashing Pumpkins. Went back and listened to Gish and Siamese Dream and Pisces Iscariot. And then I kind of followed them from there through Zwan, which is a band that I really, really loved. I loved that Zwan record, Mary Star of the Sea, through his solo album, The Future Embrace, and then through when the Pumpkins got back together the first time with Zeitgeist, all the different lineup changes, all of it. I am still here as a Smashing Pumpkins fan, and I think a lot of us are still here from judging from the people I talk to on this channel. A lot of us are still here. A lot of Smashing Pumpkins fans are still massive fans, and I think he really undervalues us as fans when you think about all the records that we've bought, all the stuff that we've done. We've been there all along with him, and I think he kind of forgets that we're out here. I bought Autumn. I didn't like that album at all, but I still bought that record. I still buy every Smashing Pumpkins album, at least on CD, and add it to my collection. So I think he really undervalues us Smashing Pumpkins fans. I think he doesn't think we're out there, but we are out there, and I think he's only really going by the mainstream and how he perceives everybody in the mainstream perceiving him. I think he's overthinking it a lot. And the problem is with Billy Corgan, and I don't really think this is the case for a lot of the bands of his era, is that the Smashing Pumpkins songs have not always been there over the years. And I've said this in every Smashing Pumpkins review and video that I've done here on the channel, is that not everything he does has to rock. Not everything has to sound like Cherub Rock or Bullet with Butterfly Wings or Zero or anything. I know that Billy Corgan is a very dynamic and very diverse songwriter. You listen to Melancholy or any of their albums, like he does so many different styles, and then from album to album, he never does anything twice. He never really repeats himself. But the thing is that the songs have to be good, and that has been the mostly inconsistent thing for him, at least for me as a fan over the years, even though I have bought every album regardless of whether I think it's good or not. And when you think about it, back in 2022 and 2023, he released a 3-disc album. Like, it was the spiritual sequel to Melancholy and Infinite Sadness, the Autumn album, which had some of the worst songs that he's ever written. And then he's getting mad at us that we're like, you didn't like all 30 songs on this kind of bad album with lots of really, really cheesy synths. Like, what's wrong with you? Why didn't you like this? And that's just how it goes when the songs aren't good. And then Agori Mori May came out last year, which was a really, really good album. I thought that was really good. Obviously, it went back to more of that stereotypical Smashing Pumpkins rock sound that a lot of people wanted him to do. And I think it's like, because the fans get so excited when he puts out those kinds of albums, it kind of validates his opinion that we're not listening to stuff when he doesn't do that, which I don't think is true at all. It's just like the songs have to be good. And I don't think that Billy Corgan as an artist has had the consistency of other bands and other artists of his era. Like, when I think about the Gallagher brothers and their solo stuff after Oasis, the songwriting has maintained its quality over the years. Noel Gallagher's current songs, the songs he's released as Noel Gallagher's High Flying Birds over the last decade or so, I love those songs just as much as I love the Oasis songs, and just the caliber and the quality of the songs. That is what's there. I know some people might disagree with me, but Weezer is another band. I know there's been a lot of controversy about whether their newer songs are as good as their older songs, but I've always thought that Weezer still has a really, really great quality of songwriting. Rivers Cuomo is still a great songwriter in my opinion, and that's reflected in most of what they've done over the last 10, 15 years as a band. And then you think about Foo Fighters, Dave Grohl. Of course, maybe things won't always live up to The Color and the Shape and Nothing Left to Lose in the debut and One by One and those kind of records. But I think Foo Fighters, for the most part, over the course of their career, have maintained a level of consistency and quality in their songwriting, at least in comparison to somebody like Billy Corgan. So I think a lot of the bands and a lot of artists of his heyday, of his era, of the 90s, have maintained a certain level of quality that Billy Corgan and the Smashing Pumpkins haven't over the last 20 years or so. So, and there's another thing too with Smashing Pumpkins is that, yeah, we have Jimmy and James back in the band, but a lot of people have always been hung up on, it's got to be the OG lineup of the Smashing Pumpkins. If Darcy isn't there, then it's not the Smashing Pumpkins. And that's not anything that I've ever really agreed with. I thought Darcy was great when she was in the band, but she's by no means an essential part of the Smashing Pumpkins going forward. They've done just fine without her. But a lot of fans seem to always get caught up and kind of hung up on, it's got to be those original 4 people. I don't really think the Smashing Pumpkins are one of those bands. They're not the Beatles where it's like, it's got to be those people. Billy Corgan is really the kind of the centerpiece of the Smashing Pumpkins. And then, he's had various lineup changes over the years. Like, I love the lineup that he had during the Oceania album. That was a great lineup with Mike Byrne on drums, Nicole Fiorentino, and then Jeff Schroeder, the 4 of them. That was like probably the best lineup of the band that we've had since the 90s. So it's like, I don't really think that Billy Corgan and the Smashing Pumpkins are misunderstood. It's just, they're not as consistent. Billy Corgan is not as consistent as a songwriter, and people have been calling him out for it for many, many years. It's like, again, I'm a hardcore Smashing Pumpkins fan. There's people watching this video. We're all hardcore Smashing Pumpkins fans, but Billy Corgan hasn't always valued us as fans, and he just kind of expects us to go along with things, even if the quality of the songs isn't there. So it's like, it's I don't really understand it. We're in a time now where nostalgia is at an all-time high. Like, if people are coming back and saying, I love Creed and I love Nickelback, and they're saying that without any ounce of shame, which we should all have a little bit of shame if we say we like a Creed or Nickelback song. Like, I put a Nickelback song as one of my tracks of the week last week on the podcast. I'm turning into a Boston accent here on the podcast, but I felt a little bit dirty doing that. I'm like, is this going to compromise my integrity as a music fan and critic on YouTube? It could have destroyed the whole thing, guys, but I did it because I'm brave, right? Because I'm like, I love this music. Leader of Men, Old Enough by Nickelback from the state. That's a killer record, man. You should fucking listen to it. Sorry for my language, but yeah, like, if we can have nostalgia for Creed and Nickelback, then we can most definitely have nostalgia for the Smashing Pumpkins. Like, we live in the age of nostalgia. There's nothing bigger right now than 90s nostalgia, and people love the Smashing Pumpkins. You go on Spotify, you go on streaming services, they're still doing fine. Obviously people listening to a lot of the stuff from their golden age, but Smashing Pumpkins are by no means a name that have gone into obscurity. So I just think it's a quality thing when it comes to Billy, and I really think that he should be getting off his soapbox. He should get that chip off his shoulder. He's been more successful in his career than most musicians could ever dream of. And now he's got that new podcast where he's not letting people talk. Like, I was watching his podcast the other day that he was talking to Wolfgang Van Halen, and I don't think Wolfgang was able to get like a single word in edgewise while Billy Corgan was talking. Billy Corgan likes to hear himself talk, and this is coming. I love Billy Corgan. I'm a big fan. Billy, not that you ever watch this channel, but I love the Smashing Pumpkins. I love you, but I just really wish you just chill out a little bit, man. You got your wife, you got your kids, you got your Smashing Pumpkins, the band's back together, you got great people on stage with you. Just enjoy being the Smashing Pumpkins. You don't have to live up to everything from the past. Just write good songs. Even songs on the new album, Agori Mori May, some of the songs don't really rock in that traditional sense, but they're still great songs. Like Who Goes There? That's a great song on this new record. And so it doesn't always have to be rock turned up to 11 for us to love the Smashing Pumpkins. The music just has to be good. So are the Smashing Pumpkins the most misunderstood band in the history of rock and roll? Absolutely not. I think they're not the underdogs that they think they are. So Smashing Pumpkins, love you guys. Billy Corgan, I love you, but you're not misunderstood at all. You just got to write good songs. And when you do, we as fans respond. And I think that you should value us hardcore Smashing Pumpkins fans that have been there through every single record. I think you should value us a little bit more. I think you're misunderstanding us, and I think you're misunderstanding the audience that is out there for your music. We're out here, man. We just want some good songs. If you can give us good songs, that's what we want to hear. So, Billy Corgan, you're not misunderstood, and that is my final thought on that topic. So let's move on to our final headliner topic on this edition of the Rock News Roundup podcast, and that is the director Ezra Edelman has been speaking out in the press on YouTube about his canceled Prince documentary that he's making for Netflix. It was, I think, announced a few months ago that this entire project was scrapped. This guy worked for 5 years on this documentary with full access to archival footage from the Prince estate, the full support of the Prince estate and the family and everybody involved. He was saying that this was going to be like a 9-hour documentary that was going to be on Netflix. And so I guess the estate of Prince thought it misrepresented Prince. Everybody here on this podcast, Billy Corgan's misunderstood. Prince is misrepresented. So many things going on here, but I guess the powers that be, were afraid of showing the real life facts and humanity of Prince, according to Ezra Edelman. And I guess over the last couple of years, Prince is not here to defend himself, but there's been some certain some nasty allegations that have been made about him and that have surfaced, as they often do. Who knows if these allegations are true? And when you think about it, when it comes to documentaries or dramatized movies of musicians' lives, musicians and estates, they try to control that narrative, right? Like documentaries, we think of them as being like, well, they're always going to be unbiased. They're always going to try to show the full truth and the full story of an artist or whoever the documentary might be about. It might not even be a musician, but they can be just as controlled and just as manipulated as the dramatized versions of these artists, whether that be, like a Bohemian Rhapsody or Rocket Man or any of these other dramatized versions of these artists' lives. And in general, I've said this before on the channel, I like music documentaries way more than dramatized versions of bands. I haven't seen Bohemian Rhapsody. I've never seen Rocket Man. I actually despise when they do these dramatized versions of these bands and these artists, because it's always so cliche. It's always so cheeseball. They're always in the studio with their hands on the headphones, singing Bohemian Rhapsody or Rocket Man or whatever it is. And it's always just really, really simplified version of these artists' stories that I guess would appeal to the masses. So I always prefer a music documentary as opposed to a dramatized film that you'd go see on the big screen. Documentaries can be skewed too. I think about one of my favorite ever documentaries about any band, and that is the Beatles anthology, which came out in the mid-1990s. I still have my DVD copy. I love the Beatles anthology. It's an incredible documentary. It's 8 parts. It's the entire story of the Beatles from when they were young all the way to the breakup in 1970. It really is this incredible documentary of the Beatles. I watch it every once in a while because I just love it. And anytime I run into somebody new, I've been trying to tell my girlfriend Danielle, we got to watch the Beatles anthology because it is just such a great way to show the Beatles story and the progression of their incredible career. But it doesn't tell the whole story. It skips over a lot of details, things maybe in their history that are, things they don't really want people to know about, some of the raunchier or racier details of their history, whether that be their time in Germany or when they became famous in 1964 and, came to America. There's certain things that you've heard about the Beatles over the years, and even saying it's I've been reading or I have read Tune In. That was the big book by Mark Lewison, the big book of the first part of the Beatles' career from their kind of their inception through to 1962. I read that book, and there's a lot of stuff in that book that would never make it in the Beatles anthology. And I know that Apple has kind of prevented Mark Lewison from getting access to a lot of things because at the end of the day, it's an unauthorized biography of the Beatles. It's not the official story. The Beatles anthology that was officially released by Apple. It's the sanitized version of the story. Of course, we get all the stuff that we want to know from that documentary, the creation of all those great albums that they did, and everything like that. And then, all the kind of the major milestones of their career and of their lives, but we miss out on a lot of that. So not talking about the Beatles, back to Prince, I can see how there are certain parts, and maybe this Ezra Edelman, he got into certain things in the documentary that the estate did not want people to know. They are trying to preserve a legacy at the end of the day. I know they're making a Michael Jackson dramatized version of his life story, and there was certain stuff in there. They actually had to rewrite some of the script because they had put stuff in there that they weren't legally allowed to put into that movie. And so, Prince's estate might be a little bit nervous when it comes to presenting certain sides of his life and of his career, because at the end of the day, you want to get into some of the things about his life, how he got into music, his history growing up, but then personally, as a music documentary fan, I want to hear about the music. I want to hear about the creation of these songs, of these albums, how they became classics. Because obviously Prince, an incredible musician, a multi-instrumentalist, one of the greatest artists to ever live. So I want to hear more about the musical side of things as opposed to the more gossipy side of things. And that's I even do this on this podcast. There are a lot of gossipy things that come out about musicians and different artists that I love, but I don't like to talk about those kinds of things on my show and on my channel because I just want to talk about music. I want to talk about the songs. I want to talk about the artists, and I don't really want to get into too much of these gossipy kind of stories that can be out on other channels and in the news. So I think I like to keep it about the music. So hopefully whenever this documentary, if they do put out a Prince documentary, it is focused mostly on the music because that is the side of things that I would be most interested in. And then it just kind of sucks because we're losing out on a 9-part Prince documentary, right? That would have been so cool. That would have been absolutely epic, sitting down on the couch, watching a Prince documentary like that. So hopefully we will get something of that ilk at some point in the near future. And, I don't really know much about Prince and his history. I'm not a huge Prince fan. Like I like his music, but I wouldn't by no means have ever gone deep into the Prince discography beyond the big singles that he's had over the years. And of course, the Batman soundtrack, which is one of my favorite soundtracks from 1989. So I think it would have been an interesting watch to see this, of course, wouldn't be just a documentary. I'm sure they would have combined it with some sort of, vinyl release or a soundtrack or a box set to go along with it, which would have been even cooler because again, focused on the music, getting some cool stuff from Prince that we've never heard before. And now we're going to get a sanitized version of whatever this documentary is going to be if it comes out, if they got another director attached or whatever. But again, as long as they talk about the Batman soundtrack, dedicate 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour to Bat Dance, I'd totally be down that, or Trust or Party Man or anything like that. So hopefully we do get a documentary, but chances are it will not be as exciting as this, this 9-part Netflix documentary that got scrapped. But that's how it goes. The estate of Prince, they call the shots when it comes to how he's represented in movie form and documentary form and any form of media. They are trying to preserve a legacy because even after somebody passes away, we know this now, Prince, John Lennon, Marvin Gaye, anybody, any of these, Kurt Cobain, anybody who has passed away in the world of rock is like, yeah, they're no longer here, but we still have to sell reissues. We still have to sell remasters. It's essentially like free money because they don't have, obviously they have to pay the Prince estate, but it's like they can just keep recycling that stuff for years and years and years. And if there's something that comes along that kind of diminishes or tarnishes the legacy of an artist, well, that's going to affect future sales and future, kind of opinions of that artist. So again, everybody on this show is misunderstood. Everybody's misrepresented. Like, come on, guys. Let's all be human beings. We know we're not perfect. We all have a dark side, right? And it's time people knew about that. But we're not going to talk about my dark side here on the show. I'm not going to do that. Anyways, those are our headliner topics for this edition of the Rock News Roundup podcast. Before we wrap things up, I'm going to give you my tracks of the week. Every week here on the show, I give you guys a couple of tracks that I think are, kind of in my earbuds right now, things that are earworms for me right now and things I'm really enjoying on Spotify and that kind of thing. So the first track of the week for this week is by Casey Lowry featuring Daywave. It's a song called Blue Corduroys. Now, Casey Lowry is not an artist that I'm really familiar with. I think he's from the UK, definitely from the sounds of this song is from the UK. But it's featuring Daywave on here, and I'm a huge Daywave fan. I love Daywave, one of my favorite artists out there right now. I think his real name is Jackson. Hold on. Type it in. Jackson Miller. Am I wrong? Jackson Phillips. His name is Jackson Phillips from Daywave. I should know that by now. Daywave is one of my favorite kind of indie dream pop artists out there. I loved him for many, many years. And that's how this popped up in my streaming on my Spotify, is because I'm a Daywave fan. It got recommended to me. But this is a great song by Casey Lowry featuring Daywave. It's called Blue Corduroys. Really, really, really cool song. Daywave, he knows how to do he's done a lot of really cool collaborations over the years, whether it be with Crooked Kings or Hazel English. He produces a lot of stuff. So I really love the work of Jackson Phillips and Daywave, and the song's by Casey Lowry. It's called Blue Corduroys. Definitely check it out. Really, really love this song. And then my other track of the week, or one of the other ones, is by Waves, one of my favorite California kind of noise rock, punk rock bands that I've listened to for many, many years, led by Nathan Williams. He's been taking a little bit of a break. He mentioned on Instagram there's been some life things that have happened over the years. The last record they put out was called Hideaway back in 2021, which is another great record. I love the music of Waves, and they just released a new song called So Long, and he says that this is the beginning of a lot of new things for Daywave, a lot of new music that's going to be coming out, and I really, really love this song. It's a great song from Daywave. If you love punky, noisy, kind of surfy California noise rock, then you should definitely check out Waves. Going back to King of the Beach and Afraid of Heights, 5 or V, whatever you want to call it. You're Welcome, Hideaway. So many great albums from Waves. Also the what's it called? I Want to Be Dave Grohl. That's also a really, really good one. That's a really great song. And then my last one that I'm going to be talking about, my tracks of the week, is by LS Dunes. And the song's called Violet from the album of the same name, which just came out about a month or so ago. LS Dunes is kind of like a rock supergroup that features the singer of Circa Survive, along with members of Coheed and Cambria and My Chemical Romance and Thursday. It's a good record. I didn't love the whole record, but I really, really love this song called Violet. It's a little bit like a love song. LS Dunes is a really, really cool band. Anthony Green, who does the lead vocals on this, has one of the most distinctive and highest voices in the world of rock and roll. He's like a modern Geddy Lee, along with, Claudio Sanchez of Coheed and Cambria. These guys who just have crazy ranges when it comes to their voices. Very difficult, even for me as the singer, to sing along with them when I'm in the car. Like, you can't just sing along with Coheed or Circa Survive or LS Dunes. Like, I can try, and sometimes I do it, but it's a hard task to accomplish. But this is a very, very cool song from LS Dunes, and it's called Violet. So those are my 3 tracks of the week. Casey Lowry featuring Daywave, Blue Corduroys, cool song. Waves, So Long, and LS Dunes, Violet. So this week's tracks of the week are very current. These are all 2025 songs. Really, really love it. And some great artists today or for this week on our tracks of the week on the Rock News Roundup podcast. But you know what, guys? That's it. I'm all out of topics. That is it for this week's edition of the Rock News Roundup podcast. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much for watching. If you want to chime in on any of the topics on this week's podcast, hop into the comments below. Really appreciate a nice conversation. Let's talk about our favorite bands and our favorite songs and talk about rock and roll. That's what we're here to do. So make sure to do that. Make sure to like this video. I'd really appreciate that. Make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on future videos. And just a little bit of a preview, a little bit of a spoiler. So what I do here on the channel is, like, in the middle of the week, I do the podcast. So that's kind of what we're doing right now. But every weekend I try to have either be like a new rock album review or some sort of new editorial video on the channel. So because there's really no new albums out this week that I want to review here on the channel, this week's video is an editorial. And I think this is pretty fun. It's going to be 10 awesome Oasis songs for people that hate Oasis. I already got the video filmed. It's already in the can. I'm working on it right now, and that's going to be the video for this week's video on the channel. So keep your eyes peeled for that. Probably go up on Friday or Saturday. So make sure to subscribe. Make sure to follow me on social media at Nick Chino Music. And yeah, I'll see you guys again for another edition of the Rock News Roundup podcast. But until then, rock on, everybody.